All right, so I think it is a little past 7 right now, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We'll call this meeting to order. First off, let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. Bill, do we happen to have the flag ready?
1 second.
And while Bill's pulling that up, does anyone want to take the lead today?
Dean's got a flag.
I was gonna say, Dean, you've almost kind of forced the issue with that flag behind you. You want to lead us? You just got to go off mute.
I think he's doing it even though he's new.
Stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, why don't we just give that one more run through, just because I think a lot of people miss. I'll take the lead.
Okay.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thanks so much, guys. The Democrats of Southwest Riverside County, the DSRC, are committed to providing a welcoming, respectful, friendly, safe, supportive, and harassment-free environment for officers, members, guests, and all others associated with the club. DSRC's mutually respectful behavior standards are not limited to DSRC membership meetings, but apply as well to calls, texts, emails, and social media. All right, and I also, as always, just want to make sure I welcome all of our guests and new members that are here tonight. I know there's a handful of guests here, so thank you guys all for being prompt, and we'll try to make sure we're extremely respectful of your time. First, real quick here, let's adopt the agenda for this evening. And there it is there. Any questions, thoughts, concerns? And if there are none, if I can get a motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt.
And a second.
I'll second it.
Awesome. I'll take silence as we're good to go. All right, let's move forward. We will go ahead and adopt the minutes from the prior meeting as of March 6, 2023. Any questions, thoughts, concerns? If not, I will take a motion.
Lisa has a hand raised, Brian.
Oh, sorry, didn't see it. Lisa.
What happened to the email that was going to be sent about the item that didn't get voted on?
Oh, we'll talk about that at the end in the
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it didn't go forward at this time.
Yeah, we're holding off on that at this time. Any other questions before we get that motion to adopt? And who wants to make the motion?
Motion to adopt.
And second?
I second.
All right, thank you.
Good job with the detailed minutes too, Angel.
Yes, well done. Thank you. Not an easy task. So now that brings us to our speakers for the evening. So we are going to start out tonight with retired Riverside County Sheriff's Captain Michael Lujan. If you don't know him from that work, you may remember him as being a candidate against Sheriff Bianco in the last election cycle. And he's here today to talk a little bit about a number of different things. His background, his journey. Definitely want to ask a little bit about current goings on within our Riverside County Sheriff's Department. Thank you so much, Michael, for making the time for us tonight. We really appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for inviting me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so I'm going to try to keep this. Pretty straightforward here. I actually wrote questions. This is not something I'm good at. Well, let me say that Nancy wrote the questions. She's better at it than I am. So we're first wondering if you can just lead us off a little bit with an overview of your background. Specifically, we're curious about what first prompted you to work in law enforcement, build a career on it, and then ultimately what led you to run for sheriff in this last election.
Well, I always growing up as a kid, I was geared toward law enforcement, public safety. I don't know why. it was just something that was always in my mind. When I grew up in the Air Force. I was a military brat, so I went to 4 different high schools. Been to Europe for 3 years when my dad was stationed in Wiesbaden, and the family just traveled around on the military's dime, which was it had a lot of positives, and the negative is you didn't have any stability. But throughout all my travels, my father being reassigned to various Air Force bases, I've always looked for some reason, gravitated toward law enforcement. I ended up graduated out of Moreno Valley High School in 1984, started going to RCC, and started taking administration of justice courses in preparation for that particular career that I wanted. And I'll never forget this guy named Sergeant Stoltz. He's the one who, the first day, he was a teacher there at RCC. The first day he gave us all an application to apply for the Sheriff's Department. It was 5 extra credit points. I didn't know whether I was going to need those 5 extra credit points at the end of the semester. So I had every point matters, right? When you're going to school. And ultimately I filled it out, turned it in, went through the hiring process, and 10 months later they offered me a job. And of course, I leaped at it, being involved in public safety and being in law enforcement. So I started my career off in October of '89. I went to the academy, the 113th Basic. Upon graduating, spent 4 years, roughly 4 years at RPDC, working corrections, then ultimately rotated out to the Elsinore station, where I worked patrol for almost 9 years there. And 1 year in Paris, I was reassigned to the Paris station. Tested for investigator, got promoted to investigator, and then was assigned to the Central Homicide Unit. Why, I don't know. The captain there was Dan Borden, and he just said, I got some good references, and I had to have you. So, I did about 9 years, almost 10 years, 9.5, 9 3/4 of a year at the homicide unit, and it was involved in about 248 cases, according to our crime analysts. In between there, I had a little break. I was a sergeant at Lake Elsinore in '05. I was their contract liaison sergeant, where I oversaw crime prevention, the lake operations, logistics. Ultimately, they pulled me back to homicide for another 5 years as a supervisor, and then ultimately I got promoted to lieutenant. Went to corrections for a couple of years. Then I went to Harupa Station, oversaw the Harupa law enforcement contract for about 4 years, promoted to captain. I committed 2 years as a captain pending my retirement, and I did the 2 years at the Elsinore, well, just shy of 2 years at the Elsinore station. Apparently I made the boss mad, disagreeing. Those 2 years were kind of enlightening when you're dealing internally with the department, because there were a lot of issues going on internally that the public isn't aware of, but they impact public safety overall, So I did my 2-year commitment, and then I retired. And then during my, first year of retirement or so, I received a number of calls asking me, hey, the reality is that, Chad is getting out of control. They said he's not, following the rule of law, following, 3300 of the government code is a peace officer bill of rights. And I got a lot of prompting to run for sheriff. I would tell you, and I think Brian understands, if you're going to prompt someone, please do it early, because that was probably that was a big mistake. I should have been, I was considering it because people were asking me in the department, and and some outside entities. I should have considered it a little earlier. I mean, I should have made a decision a little earlier. And that's where that was. If you're new to the campaign cycle or campaigning, you're going to need to get in early and establish, your various accounts, and fundraising. So that was probably, the biggest thing I've learned during the campaign. Overall, the campaign experience is a wonderful experience. It's enlightening. It's educational. I had a good time on it. My first encounter with some people who I believe were really good in politicking, I guess, would be, I don't know if you know Greg Cervantes, Clarissa Cervantes, Joy Silver, and Amelia. I'm not going to pronounce her last name because I know I'm going to butcher it. It's going to be Amelia. It begins with a D. She's in the desert. Wonderful people. Josie Gonzalez out of Coachella. They really educated me a lot on campaigns, and what is required. So I'm pretty well versed. Not as good as them, but if you need help, I can get you started. They were great. They were fabulous. So that was, I recommend you get in early. I got in for the full purpose of, I've always viewed things from right from wrong. I've always viewed things from what can we do? I've always told people, you tell me what you want from the sheriff's department, I'll tell you if we can do it. And if we can do it, we're going to do the best we can to accomplish it. If we can't do it, I'm going to explain to you why we can't do it. A lot of it has to do with circumstances beyond the department's control and how the laws are written. Law enforcement doesn't write the laws, we enforce the law. We're not into getting into writing. We can recommend and suggest, but once the law is passed, I truly believe that we should be enforcing that law with fairness and objective, and that the office shouldn't be partisan. So that's in a nutshell of my career and why I got into it. Mainly because of the fact that there was a lot of, and you see it now with the Attorney General is probably the AG and DOJ here. They probably took a big bite opening up that civil rights investigation into the department. I had an individual who will remain nameless called me and said he called the Attorney General to file a complaint. And he was bold enough, and I have mad respect for him, he was bold enough and courageous enough to put his name on it.
Wow.
So he put his name on it. I told him, stand by. And he said that he told me that they will not get to his case probably for another year because they received so many calls and complaints. And what does that tell you? That tells you there's, some significant misconduct going on, which I'm aware of, and I think it's a sad day for Riverside, the department in Riverside County. So what I learned and experienced is get in early, and get out there. A lot of people told me regardless of where you're at on the political spectrum, a lot of people told me, a lot of people had supported me. The organizations now had, you have bylaws that you can't support certain people. I'm nonpartisan. I used to be a Republican. I'm not, I'm no party preference. I felt that the job requires no party preference and no partisanship. Right now, we have a partisan sheriff, and he's only dealing with one thing, and taking no responsibility for the department's actions or the department's failures. And one thing I was big on was community involvement. People came to me all the time and spoke to me and asked for their input, provided their input, and we applied that input to various stations or various concepts that they wanted to see, especially the cities, our contract cities. I think the department needs to work, diligently in working on saving them money, because you can maintain a high level of public safety and be cost effective to our cities. Because we are, I say we, I'm no longer employed, but the sheriff's department is what I did for 31 years, in 2 months. So I think that it's important that the department goes back to more of a community-oriented policing philosophy and working with our contract city. If you live in one of our contract cities, with the sheriff's department, then sometimes you feel your complaints are falling on deaf ears. And with the current administration, they highly likely are. So I know I probably got off on a tangent. You got to cut me off.
No. All good. Honestly, you kind of answered my second question already, and no. So this is always a good thing. I'm going to ask this. So you kind of touched on this already. So right, as a chartered Democratic club, we cannot outwardly endorse you. How would you, from your experience, look to work with the individuals that make up these clubs to kind of help amplify voices that may not necessarily be Democrats, but if we don't have a Democrat option, might be that better solution? Because I could make an argument that you, independent or not, were always a better solution than Sheriff Bianco. So how do you view that piece?
I view that, I respect that. That's your charter, your bylaws. and I respect that. But as I spoke to many people, individuals on an individual level, that that offered their support, both with a vote and both monetary support for the campaign, and because I didn't want anyone to violate any of the rules, regulations, bylaws of any group or committee that they're involved in. But I also wanted to remind them that you want an individual in law enforcement that's going to enforce the law and do it fairly, objectively, and equally across the board, who's going to respect everybody's opinion, and recognizes that, as a manager in the sheriff's department, my job was to listen to your concerns and do the best I can to resolve those concerns, regardless of what they are, as long as they're within the guidelines and parameters of the department, we will do that. So you want to look at someone who's not going to say, well, I'm not going to do this because, you're a Democrat and you passed this law, like Proposition 47 and 58, and you passed this law, so I don't like you forever. No, well, okay, this was my response when I was working. Hello, I'm in a meeting, my response is this. Hello, the propositions were voted on by the people of California. And there were counter propositions that were shot down voted against by the people of California. So as far as I'm concerned, and this doesn't go well in a commander's meeting under the Bianco administration, we have to deal with Proposition 47 and Proposition 57 because they were voted on by the people. That's the rule of law that is today. You want to complain about AB 109? We can complain about AB 109. It's the rule. It's the law of the land right now in California. If you want AB 109 overturned, then you lobby our legislators that we in Riverside County vote to go to Sacramento and have them lobby on our behalf to overturn or repeal AB 109. Which, they tried it. The state has tried it with the propositions and they failed. So 47 and 57, they're basically reductions from some felonies to misdemeanors and changing the monetary amount for grand theft. Now I hear all this stuff, this complaint that, they're getting out 2 days early. They're going in, they're sentenced to 1 year, but they get out in 3 days. You guys heard that? How they're only doing a fraction of the time. Well, once again, that is the responsibility of the sheriff's department, right? We are still under a decree, and it's a simple one. It's basically every inmate housed in our correctional facility is required to have a bed to sleep on. When I started out in 1989, you had a 2-man cell that we fit 5 people in. So you had people sleeping on the floor, 3 people sleeping on the floor. Of course, that went to court, and that's one of our federal decrees, which is fine. We need to apply. If you come to jail, you should have a bed. You should have a bunk to sleep on. You should have a mattress to sleep on, right? That's just basic, human needs, and provide that for them, right? And you look at, when I hear people say, well, we have to release them for overcrowding, they're not doing their full 6-month sentence. Well, they're not doing their full 6-month sentence because we have, as a department, have failed to really staff the Indio jail, which is John Benoit Detention Center. So that is 90% vacant. So people who were sentenced to 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, they could do their time in jail and pay their debt to society. However, the department has not staffed or fully staffed the John Benoit Detention Center. So, when I hear that, I'm like, that's mismanagement of personnel. The sheriff's department's responsibility falls under courts, corrections, right? And patrolling the unincorporated communities of the county. Our contract cities is simply that. The 17 contract cities are contract cities for law enforcement personnel. So when we look at that, and one thing I see now is we're not going to improve over the next 5 years because you see Bianco and his leadership. Have you ever seen him take responsibility for anything? I mean,
I haven't been here particularly long, but I have not personally.
Correct. You're correct. One thing like when the historic courthouse. Remember there was anti-abortion protest there, or a protest against what the Supreme Court ruled. in Roe versus Wade. 10 people used supposedly green water-based paint to put handprints on the historic courthouse. He initially blamed 3 Riverside City Council members, and he somewhat apologized to 2, but then he focused on, Council Member Clarissa Montes. And I think he focused on, Clarissa, because Clarissa was providing valuable information and assistance to my campaign. She also has works for a consulting firm outside her duties as a member of the Riverside City Council, a BZD consultant, who do very well in consulting and guiding candidates on the campaign trail. And I think that his why does he apologize to somewhat a kind of like a weak apology to 2, and then keep the 3rd one? And I think that was just purely that is, in my opinion, retaliation for her helping me, and not to mention it's an outright lie.
I would agree. It definitely felt like a political thing. I remember when that happened, I actually spoke out about it at one point. It's one of those things where that type of office really needs the right type of personality, the right type of mentality in it. And I really struggle, just generally speaking, with Bianco's demeanor. And so I think that kind of rolls into my next question here. Can you talk a bit about what's been going on in these jails and the deaths that have happened to several inmates? About a month before the election, I remember speaking with a number of families that had been a part of that. They were all, it felt like it was a lot of speculation about fentanyl and things like that getting in there. I don't want to cross any boundaries that you can't cross, but what can you say about that in general?
I have no boundaries. I'm not an employee.
That.
I can tell you, drugs are a constant challenge in our corrections bureau. They're always coming in a variety of ways. Some of the things they do to combat that is, 1, you do a physical search of an individual coming in the correctional facility, right? 2, they have scanners. You know how you go to TSA, you have these scanners you walk through, it loops around. They have they have a very small version of that in the jail. And 3, they have correctional canines that do searches, right? So it's very important that you do all 3 are conducted. In the most recent overdose down at Coysburg Detention Center, I was told that that the intake personnel did a horrible job in searching an individual who was being booked into custody. They didn't send them through the scanners, and there was no correctional canines. And they don't use the canines very often. They kind of just roam around to all the facilities and do searches. And then the inmate was placed into the housing area, and that's how this particular drug came in. The drugs came in, the individual overdosed. That's one way it comes in. Another way it comes in through the mail. When we search mail in the jail, we take the stamp off, right? We wear gloves. We take, you lick the envelope or self-sealing, we pull that out. First, we hit it with light. You hit the envelope with your flashlight and see if anything sticks out, because most of the envelopes are, the light will illuminate what's inside. So that's how you check those. Another way it comes in, staff member, either a correctional deputy, a civilian employee, or a volunteer. They've been known to bring in narcotics for inmates that they have befriended, and to say it's not happening is just ignorant, and you're just outright lying to the public. Those are the 3 main ways of narcotics coming in. So when someone dies of an overdose, right, majority of that responsibility is on the department's failure to locate that particular item. You even do, when people who are arrested for narcotics, they even do one step further, and then what they do is they request a strip search, where you actually do, a strip search of the individual and their cavities. And that has to be, you have to document that on a form, making a request to a supervisor on why you want to do a strip search of an individual who's just coming in. A lot of that is done for people who were given a surrender date. You go to court, you're sentenced to 30 days, 60 days, and you turn around and you ask the judge if you can surrender in 5 days so you can get your personal affairs in order. It's granted. a lot of the strip searches are done when people who know they're coming to jail. They will secrete narcotics, either by swallowing them or secrete them in a rectal cavity, and then they'll try to bring them in. You know, so there are various steps to prevent it. You're not going to always stop it, but to sit there and blame, you know, the inmate and the inmate's family, you know, 100% is just, you know, it's disrespectful, it's wrong, it's offensive. You know, when the department has a legal and moral responsibility to keep drugs out and to make sure that those individuals who are incarcerated are well taken care of. You know, they made a mistake. Some are, you know, are pre-trial, pre-sentence, so they're innocent until proven guilty, because that's the way the law works. They're innocent until proven guilty. So you need to care for them. Those who are sentenced, they're sentenced. They're just trying to pay their debt to the society, and you need to care for them equally. You know, and I don't see that. A lot of people who call me saying that, you know, you're required to do a security check, physically do a security check every hour, you know, every hour you have to do one, right? So you have to go in there to look at someone. Either they're awake. If they're not awake, you have to see if they're breathing. Sometimes you will actually wake them up at 2 o'clock in the morning, right? Turn the lights on. You want to make sure they're okay. So you have to do a security check every 60 minutes. A lot of times that's not being done. And then the laws, and I would say majority of the jail is on video. So you'll be able to access that. You know, you have to do a CPRA request, but you'll be able to access that. So my issue is even when I was still employed, my issue was, why don't you sit down with the family and talk to them and let them know what happened? It's not going to change anything. You know, it's just going to give them the information, you know, because you can't bring their loved one back, but you can tell them what happened, whether it was an overdose, whether it was a medical condition, whether it was a fight, you know, a murder. If you just lay it out on the table to the family, you know, because they're grieving. You know, people who are in jail are someone's daughter, someone's son, aunt, uncle, brother, you know, godson, goddaughter, you know. So they have loved ones who recognize that, you know, they've made a mistake, but they didn't deserve to die in a Riverside County jail. So I think it's important that you sit down, because I don't believe that by telling them the truth is going to hurt or harm the department in any way. But you'll have those risk management folks on the side saying, no, don't tell them nothing. Well, if the roles were reversed, you would want to know, right?
Absolutely.
Put yourself in their position. You want to know. Prime example, in Lake Elsinore, you know, before I arrived there was a young lady who tried multiple attempts to commit suicide and ultimately, unfortunately, succeeded. Suicide. They wrote it off as suicide. Apparently, nobody wanted to talk to the parents. You know, this was an adult female who lived cohabitated with adult male, but no one wanted to talk to, you know, the parents. And I'm sure, and she even went up above my head. I pulled the case, I reviewed the case, everything indicated it was a suicide. I sat down with you know, her mother and stepfather and explained why it was a suicide. They disagreed with me, but they also, you know, thanked me for having this meeting, because no one else wanted to talk to them about it, or they refused to talk to them about it. You know, I said, unfortunately, there's no evidence to indicate, you know, that your daughter was a victim of a homicide. You know, they didn't accept it. Well, the husband did, you know, the mother didn't. She didn't accept it, but she understood this was the information. I provided her all the information. Maybe she wanted to get an outside second opinion on it from maybe a private investigator. And you know, ultimately she called the chief, saying she did, you know, they disagreed with me, but they had all the information and they were grateful for that. There's nothing more I could do for them other than to explain the investigation and what evidence was recovered, you know. So I think that's important. You're going to get, and I know there's somewhere in risk management saying, don't say nothing, because we're going to get sued. Yeah, you're going to get sued, but this isn't about money. You know, this is about having some sense of, you know, solace or peace to someone who lost their son in our custody.
And I honestly, I want to push back, and it's not on you, but on the concept of risk managers not wanting to disclose these sorts of things, because it snowballs, right? The more you have to build this culture of hiding things and making sure that people don't talk about the issues, you end up in a situation where they become more and more accepted and just part of what it is, right? So I don't know who you have in who would be in that organization that would think like that, but I would challenge that person to think about it a little differently. Think about it from the perspective of, yes, it may take time to change views, change ideas. Yes, you're going to get some lawsuits, but you're going to get them anyways. Correct. Right. If you keep those things out in the open and you make them just part of what you do, that's how everyone improves. And that's how hopefully the next person down the line survives. I
can tell you that's not going to happen in this current administration, because I still speak to a lot of the commanders, and it's basically, we don't express our opinions. We don't have to. Not like me, I was one to always express my opinion, and even when I was working, I always expressed that maybe we should sit down with these family members and, let them know, let them ask the questions. Well, let's answer the questions. The investigation is closed. Just like this recent lawsuit, what was I'm putting on my homicide hat, right? Because I spent almost 10 years in there. I cannot find a legal justification to hold the remains for 2 months. Once the autopsy is done, you take your tissue samples, your fluid samples, it's done. You're just waiting toxicology. Right. And you're waiting for, an overall, what they call a in custody death review, where everyone gets together, the investigators get together, the coroner's bureau gets together, and they discuss, well, what happened? What did you see? And then the pathologist makes a finding that, in this particular case, I would imagine that it was a finding of, accidental overdose causing death while in custody. Typically, sometimes they'll do it for law enforcement in a fatal death involves shooting. It's the cause of death would be whatever. Typically, gunshot wound to the torso. The manner of death is, homicide. Confrontation with law enforcement, because a homicide is basically the killing of one human being by another human being, and that is the definition of homicide. Then you have your categories of homicide, of justifiable homicide, and a first degree murder, malice of forethought, and the second degree murder. So that is usually classified that, but I can't find any reason why they would hold the remains of the loved ones for 2 months. I thought that was pretty excessive.
It's difficult at best, right? And it's just downright disrespectful to the family at absolute worst. There's religious beliefs that people may hold, things like that it becomes a significant issue, and that's really, really unfortunate. So I'm going to just kind of pull back just a little bit here. Just police reform, just in general. I know it means a lot of things to a lot of different people. I'm just curious to you, what does that term mean to you? What kind of changes would you like to see, not just in Riverside County, but in California, nationwide, whatever it might be? How do you see the situation as it is right now, and how would you look to improve it?
Well, the reforms are different depending on what agency you're referring to. If you look at LA County Sheriff's Department, it's an LAPD, they're 10,000 strong, right? They have a lot of reforming to do. If you look at the new Senate bill, I think 2 under the post decertification guidelines, one of them is law enforcement gangs. If you've noticed, LASD, the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, they have a history of these deputy cliques, and they were they're gangs. They do criminal activity. They set people up, and there's clear and convincing evidence of that. When I look at the Riverside County, when I look at reform, I look at, you need to go back to a more community-oriented policing involving the community. I think one thing we need to do, and I think the Board of Supervisors need to take the lead on this, is you need to create an oversight committee or commission, not just for, law enforcement, but you also have code enforcement and you have other departments. So you need to have a committee to overlook the policies and procedures and conduct of county employees. when we look at the sheriff's department, they have this advisory committee that's only appointed by Bianco. And I've talked to a couple of people who were on that advisory committee, and one of the things that he had said is everything you read about me in the media is a lie. On that committee. And if you want someone to advise the sheriff's department, you should have that committee or commission should be a representative of the community you serve. So you have our 5 supervisors. They are elected, right, from districts, from the supervisory district. They represent people in that district, very diverse, right? You should have the same, 9, 11, 15, committee or commission to oversee the sheriff's department. And I say the sheriff's department because we are the biggest budget. We cost the most money. The sheriff's department also costs the most money in litigation, so someone needs to overlook those items and give a fair and objective view on what we need to do to improve, right? Maybe we should, on the one hand, if you're not chasing a felon, right? And this was happening when I was a lieutenant, we were kind of gravitating toward this ourselves, vehicle pursuits, right? We were kind of changing, the sergeant who approves the vehicle pursuit is, you need to evaluate, is this $2,000 Honda Accord, 1999 Honda Accord, worth the life of an innocent motorist, right? You have to evaluate that as a supervisor. My opinion is it's not, I had lieutenants who agreed with me and sergeants who agreed with me. Now, if the driver of that stolen Honda Accord committed a rape or a homicide, it's risky, but you have to take the risk as that particular individual has already demonstrated they're willing to rape an individual or kill an individual, let alone just steal a car. So I always tell the sergeants, and the sergeants were like, you're right, I'm not gonna, if you're chasing a car and all it is a stolen car, what we find is majority of people will steal the car to go get from point A to point B and abandon the vehicle. But if we chase them, and the date, the hour and the day is fine. If it's 2 o'clock in the morning, there's less traffic. But if it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, pushing 3 o'clock, then you have schools to worry about. So you really have to say, is there a heightened risk in chasing this automobile, that is property only versus the life of an innocent motorist. So I've listened to the radio, both as a lieutenant, both as a captain, but the sergeants would we say 1022, discontinue the pursuit. It's not worth it, So we have to evaluate that instead of just chasing, just outright chasing, so you have to write the want. Another, it's difficult because we have a lot of less than lethal options. I don't understand. Well, I do understand why we don't have those deployed in high quantities. It's because of money, right? You have the taser, right? You have canines that are used, but we also have less than lethal. We have very limited number of beanbag shotguns. They hurt as heck, but you're not going to die from them, right? And we have the SL 45 millimeter rubber bullet ones. We use those in corrections, but why aren't they used on patrol? And then J-Core. We have a J-Core pepper ball that they don't have enough of those. So typically when I was working, we make sure we had one in the city of Elsinore, J-Core pepper ball platform, one in the city of Wildomar, and one in the county. When I was at Harupa, we made sure we had Norco deputy had one, and Eastville deputy had one, the county deputy had one, and Harupa deputy had one. So those are limited resources. So you have to wait for someone to arrive to deploy them. So, another reform thing is we're going to need to do, we need to provide more education and more, both of the public on what we do, how we do it, why we do it, and then have the public input on what can we do better. Right? Because
I think that feedback loop's super important, right?
Yeah.
Like, not just the internal stuff, which I think is also vital, obviously, but the people working with the police and vice versa to make sure the communities are safer. It builds trust. It builds that sense of community, and it really kind of makes things function appropriately. We're getting close to the end of time. I wanted to ask you, are you okay if we take a couple questions from the audience?
Oh, absolutely. I see Mr. Sheridan, Councilman Sheridan has his
Yeah.
hand up.
So go ahead, Tim.
Hello, Captain Lujan. And full disclosure, Captain Lujan and I had a great relationship when he was in Lake Elsinore. He just mentioned talking to the public, and you and I did at least 2 town hall meetings together. And you would come out and I would organize citizens and residents of particular neighborhoods, and we would have discussions. And you did a great job, and you let people know about that. And let me just say, I'm a big fan of yours. And thank you for everything you did when you were in Lake Elsinore. You were a great, great chief.
Oh, you're welcome. It was a privilege. I hope Jim's saving you money.
Yeah, Tammy, go ahead.
Sorry, I got on late. It was in another meeting, but I didn't want to miss it. I just want to say how much I appreciate you. I sure wish you were our sheriff right now. But you
You're
mentioned
welcome. Thank you.
it, and I wrote a lot of postcards for you. But anyway,
Oh, thank you.
I want to go back to what you said about the community policing and getting the supervisors involved. I think it's a great idea. There needs to be more oversight. Our current sheriff has no oversight, thinks he's above the law, treats people horribly. I can go on and on. And so I'm just wondering how we do that. Do I write to my supervisor and say, hey, I think the sheriff needs more oversight. I think you should form a committee, or I just don't even know where to get started.
I think that they have to step up, and someone has to encourage them to start that
Okay.
committee, that commission, and grant them the authority to provide that oversight and review of things. When you look at, because Bianco's not going to do it himself.
No.
I can tell you right now, he commits no wrong. Okay, in his mind, he commits no wrong. And I've known the guy since 1990, and we've had this discussion. You know, other people who grew up through the ranks with us also said that, you know, the what he's saying is not going to come to fruition, because once he gets in, you know, he's going to do whatever he wants to do. And that's when you lose that public safety, that community service ideology, belief, and concept. And that has to be there. The Board of Supervisors is just going to have to create it and grant it and have people, you know, apply for it, kind of similar to like the grand jury. You can apply for the grand jury and to sit on the grand jury. You know, Riverside County, it's time to have oversight in all aspects of county government. You know, it's just simple as that. You know, I know that the sheriff's department is getting inundated with lawsuits, both by, you know, the public and by, you know, staff. You know, I don't know how many times I field a call saying, you know, is this, you know, something that is a violation, you know, of the law? And 9 out of 10 times I'm saying, yeah, you know, and this is the law that you're going to look at. This is what you're going to review for a violation of the law. And once again, I tell people all the time, don't be shy for doing the right thing. If you do the right thing, you act accordingly, according to the law, policy, procedures, no matter what anybody says, you're going to come out smelling like a rose. You're going to, you know, no matter, as long as you act appropriately, the resident is going to know that you did the right thing. The department's going to know that you did the right thing. And it's all about education, you know, and informing. You know, when you go take a law enforcement action, inform the resident why you took this action. You know, at least they'll be informed why you stopped them, why someone said that they were the ones who committed the crime or looked like they matched the description. And if they're not, apologize to them, thank them for their time, and let them be on their way. Don't hold someone longer than need to conduct your investigation, but always explain. Back to your, because, you know, sometimes I get off in a tangent. I truly believe the Board of Supervisors has to step up and say, we need to create a commission or a committee to oversee. You know, you can say it's everybody, the sheriff's department, code enforcement, you know, animal control, you know, even the district attorney's office. You notice now you're seeing in the paper their employees are suing the department. So, I mean, what does that tell you? So, yeah, right. Letter writing campaign, ask someone who's on the campaign trail. Are they willing to commit to working on creating a commission or a committee to oversee the sheriff's department, right? And more importantly, oversee the sheriff's department in three general areas. I would want someone to oversee my department if I was the sheriff. One would be training and use of force, right? Training and use of force are critical. Discipline, because a lot of deputies are taking disciplines, they're appealing their discipline. Is the discipline fair? Is it appropriate? And that is an expense to the department. When they go to arbitration and the department has to pay, $20,000 for arbitration. Why don't we have a committee that can review whether that discipline is within guidelines and fair? I can give you one example. A friend of mine, off duty, New Year's Eve. What do you do on New Year's Eve? You celebrate, right? Yes, he got drunk. Yes, he pissed off a neighbor, right? He committed no crime, but they turned around and told him that, he embarrassed the department. He failed to keep his private life unsullied. And if you look at the law enforcement code of ethics, there's a section in there, I will keep my private life unsullied. What the definition of unsullied is, I don't know. But he embarrassed the department. They literally put it in the report because I did not believe it. And they told him, you either retire or we're going to fire you. Well, of course he's going to retire because, he has all this time on. He's going to get more benefits when he retires as opposed to getting fired, And on the flip side, I know an individual who got a DUI, fought CHP, goes through the judicial process, still going through the judicial process because unavailable courtrooms. He gets promoted twice. So those are important things that you need to look at on why someone from a third party needs to review the discipline on whether it's important. Because from an internal perspective, discipline is imposed to change behavior. Now, I'm a firm believer what you do in your private life is your business, not a department's business, as long as you're not breaking the law. Because when you break the law, then it's a department business. All right. The third and final thing I think an oversight committee or commission should review and be knowledgeable of and provide feedback is the budget. Where are we spending the money? A prime example, I know, how much do you think a hood vent costs in corrections in a commercial kitchen? How much do you think a hood vent costs, right? You take the old hood vent down and you put in the new hood vent, right? It's stainless steel, it's multiple screws, right? It goes up, it goes out, vents out the top of the roof of the jail. How much do you think a hood vent costs? Because I believe the one at Coysburg Detention Center, they charged them $400,000 for it. So that's what I was told by an individual. 400,000. I go, 400,000. Why is that? Well, they have this projects management unit that Chad created, right? It was the friend of a former assistant sheriff, Robert Gunzel. Gunzel was released, allowed to retire, because on email, he was basically intimidating and staff because they were writing tickets to campaign donors and friends of him and the sheriff. Well, they had this guy named Ramon in the projects management unit came over from Orange County, and now he has all these secret fees, like a design fee. Well, $10,000 design fee. I'm like, what's the design fee for, right? It's a hood vent. You take a tape measure, you measure, you call the manufacturer, this is the hood vent I want, and they deliver it. And that worked. And I can tell you in Elsinore, and there's a community room, right? All the stations have a community room. It's free to use as long as you don't run a business, right? So I wanted the community room. I wanted wallpaper taken down and I wanted it repainted, right? It's just your standard room. It's a nice size room, and there's only 2.5 walls to paint because one wall has the kitchen and cabinets and the TV's mounted and it drops down. How much do you think it'd take to remove wallpaper off one wall and then paint 2.5 walls? Well, they came back with a quote. They said, oh, it's $8,000. I said, $8,000? No, thank you. Because I thought that $8,000 was excessive. They said, well, it's prevailing wage. I go, I understand you're using prevailing wage, but I don't know of anyone who would come in here and paint 2.5 walls for $8,000. I just don't see it. You know, I can paint my whole, I got a quote for my whole house and it was 4,000, you know, so budget is important. Know where the money, the taxpayers' dollars are going. And, you know, that's why, you know, when, before the election, you know, Angulo was saying that, you know, the sheriff isn't cooperating with his audit. And the sheriff responded, I'm cooperating as the law requires, right? Well, internally, what happened is for big budget items, you usually go to the board for approval for purchasing big budget items. You know, they did it for the helicopter. Well, you know, those command posts, my understanding, you know, Angulo had discovered, you know, the old shell game. We take a little money out of this account, a little money out of this account, a little money out of this account, a little money out of this account. And, you know, before you know it, you have $2.1 million being funneled in these small amounts to avoid budget requirement to get 3 mobile command posts. When the reality is you could have probably went to the board and asked for 3 and they would have gave you 2, you know, which has been the proper and right thing to do. That's why I think it's important, you know, the committee or commission who is can oversee this. And one of the things Will Taylor, and I'll mention Will Taylor, he was the finance chief, he was let go, but he was the most honest and ethical guy I know when it comes to money, because he was the finance chief. He said, you can do this, you can't do that. And this is why you can't do this, because of these financial rules and purchasing guidelines. But he was let go, you know, so I think it's important that you manage your department effectively. And, you know, and I want to get back to the John Benoit Detention Center, because it's not completely full, but yet we have the Lake Matthews Station, right? The Lake Matthews Station is housed 75 employees there, right? And it was there to improve response times. We're working both Harupa Station, who covers the north end of that beat of Lake Matthews, and Lake Elsinore Station, who covers the south end of that jurisdictional boundary of the Lake Matthews area. They could have saved money by just beefing up those 2 patrol stations with additional personnel strictly designed to patrol the unincorporated community on the 15 corridor, north of Lake Elsinore, south of Norco. And that would have saved you millions of dollars. When I left, we were able to secure, if you live in Trilogy, or if you live in Spanish Hills, or you live at the retreat, when I was there, we even were able to get more deputies to create their own little community-oriented, problem-oriented policing team that went out there and solved these community problems. And the whole gist of that station was to reduce response times, right? But guess who lives in that jurisdiction? Assistant Sheriff Lelevere and Bianco. Which
times. of course they're gonna cover themselves first and foremost.
And that station will cover them after they retire and leave. So, but that's my take on it. I also would recommend everybody do CPRA requests. You know, if you want to know what the budget is, you know, make that request. Also, what's a good request is when we're talking about Fed kicks, you've heard Fed kicks and early releases. That's because of the consent decree. How many are those being kicked? You know, recent article came out about an individual who was convicted of 39 felonies, but we released them, someone released after 3 days because we didn't have bed space. Well, that's the department's problem. That's their mismanagement and their failures to provide that bed space and let this individual who keeps stealing do his time. You know, let him do his 180 days or 360 days through correction. So, but
much appreciated. Yeah,
this
is, you know, there's amongst many reasons. This is why I wanted to make sure we got you on here to talk to us about this. There's so much going on. You know, obviously we have a campaign coming up here fairly soon. I can speak the same as you, right? Get in early, get our candidates. This is one of the reasons. Encourage people to get in early. But obviously just the general talk about the atmosphere here in Riverside County is like super important. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. And my hope is that we can do this again sometime real soon. So
anytime, you're very welcome. I know a few of you have my cell phone, so you're welcome to text me. Text me first, because if you call me and you're not programmed on my contacts, it just goes straight to voicemail.
I know that feeling. So thank you so much. And I will let you get to the game. I think it's on right now.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Once again, I want to give a shout out to those who, not only that, everybody who supported me and helped me throughout my campaign, but those who really educate me, like Joyce Silver, Greg, and Clarissa Cervantes, Amelia, and Josie Gonzalez out of Coachella. Wonderful, wonderful people. So, and of course, all you guys are wonderful too, and I deeply appreciate it. So, is there anything you need or anything, just shoot me a holler or a text. I'll be happy to help out.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. You guys have a great evening.
All right, have a good night.
Really appreciate
night.
it. Thank you.
All right. Yes, thank you again. That was really, really great. I hope everyone else learned something with that. I know I certainly did. So now it is time for, I think Tim's still on. Where's he hiding? There you are. Tim, I know you want to talk to us about the warehouse update as well as a little bit of an update on your own campaign. So take it
Thank you
away.
very much, Brian, and good evening, everybody. And again, I apologize. Last month I was traveling and I wasn't able to talk about the warehouse issue, but no issue tonight. So I want to talk about that first. One of the things that happened last summer while I was mayor was my colleague Bob McGee introduced a proposal to pass a good neighbor policy in the city of Lake Elsinore. Part of the reason that he wanted to do that was because we were getting inquiries from builders about building warehouses in Lake Elsinore. And of course, if you know anything about warehouses, they're not always a great economic driver, in part because they usually pay low wages. And after it's built, there's not much more other than, just moving material in and out of the warehouse. And of course, to do that, you need trucks, and there's an environmental issue, and there's just a whole slew of things that warehouses are not very resident friendly. And to that end, Bob wanted to create a committee. And so we did. We created a committee in Lake Elsinore. The committee worked with staff to develop policies and standards that would be appropriate for warehousing, industrial and distribution land uses within the city of Lake Elsinore. And on February 14th, on our agenda, he brought forth that good neighbor policy. It was on the agenda for the 14th, but prior to the meeting, there was a request or two or three to have it continued to March 28th. Which the council decided to do, in part because we hadn't gotten a lot of individuals to come and talk about warehouses in Lake Elsinore and this good neighbor policy that we wanted to implement. So we continued it to March 28th. And that was the genesis of me talking about it last month. Fortunately, the policy was again continued at the March 28th meeting. It's now going to be considered on April 25th at the Lake Elsinore meeting. But the reason why I wanted to talk about it was because there has been some changes from the original proposal that was on the agenda on February 14th. And it changed up until the March 28th meeting. And I wanted to bring those to your attention. And I suspect given the fact that we continued it to April 25th, there's going to be more changes. And in my view, these changes are not beneficial for the residents of the city of Lake Elsinore, or frankly, up for the environment. And I wanted to bring those to your attention. The first change involved the language regarding what type of warehouse would be subjected to the policy. Prior to the February 14th meeting, the policy read that it would apply to any building that had a cumulative square footage of 250,000 square feet or more, including all buildings in a single project. So that was what was being proposed on February 14th. Getting to March 28th, that changed to allowing for any building that was less than 250,000 square feet would not be part of the policy. So essentially what a builder could do is build a 230 square foot building and then build a 25,000 square foot office, which would be 255,000 square feet. Under the old policy, that would have been subject to the good neighbor policy. Under the March 25th proposal, it would not be. And that would not be beneficial because you could essentially skirt the whole purpose of the good neighbor policy. So that was the first change. And again, I don't know if there's going to be more changes with respect to that issue, but if there are, I think it's something that we need to talk about. Another change that occurred from the February 14th agenda to the March 28th agenda was that the setback was going from 500 feet to 300 feet. So in other words, a warehouse could be closer to a sensitive receptacle, i.e. a house, a school, a park, etc. And so I thought that was not beneficial either, that the policy changed to make it easier for a warehouse builder to put a building closer to those receptacles. And finally, the third change that occurred was really troublesome to me, and that involved the facility hours of the business that would be operating out of the warehouse. We initially had set business hours that we were going to implement in Lake Elsinore, obviously during the course of the day when most people are either at work or away from home. But the new proposal that came out for the March 28th meeting lessened that restriction to be based on a project by project basis. And it also gave the operator of the building an opportunity to demonstrate that they have mitigated an issue if they decide to go beyond the hours. So it went from a set period of time that these buildings could operate to making it a little bit more opportune for operators to operate during the course of the day or at night when people obviously are trying to sleep or enjoy time with their families in their homes. So those three changes have come up from February 14th to March 28th. And one of the things that my colleagues at the meeting on March 28th said was they want to hear from the public. And so I want to make sure that you're aware of these changes and that it might be advantageous for you to come to the Lake Elsinore City Council meeting and let your feelings be known about these three particular issues. I certainly will do so, and I urge you to come out as well. Let me also very quickly make note that Majority Leader Eloise Gomez-Reyes in the Assembly has a pending bill, Assembly Bill 1000, AB 1000. And our friend Maha Rizvi actually sent this out today via email. I haven't had a chance to read it, but she has a bill pending in the Assembly. This too is something that will help regulate warehousing, especially in the Inland Empire, where warehousing has just exploded, in part because there's so much land. And so I wanted to bring all of this to your attention, and I'll be happy to take any questions about it if anybody has any at this point. I see Tammy's hand raised.
You talk about trucks and warehouses, I got to say something. I don't know if if everybody knows, but I'm the president of the Truck Safety Coalition. It's a national organization in Washington, D.C. And I remember when I was canvassing for Fozzie in Riverside, and I knocked on somebody's door, and he's very, very conservative. And he, as conservative as he was, said, I'm really worried about these warehouses they're building out by March Air Force Base, too close to the homes, that they had a stage 13 smuggler. Now, I don't know if you're all old enough to remember those, but I do when I was younger, and it's horrific. The other thing is you might want to, I'm not sure if Lake Elsinore has truck routes, because that's going to be another issue. And that's an issue that we have in Eastville right now. The truck route is on Lymanite, which is a major thoroughfare with shopping and everything else, and there's dangers to that. Tim, I'd be willing to come, but I'm not a resident there. I don't know if it would help you or not, but it's a lot of red flags of what you said. There's a lot of red flags.
No, I would encourage everybody to come because while this good neighbor policy is meant to protect the citizens of Lake Elsinore, I don't want it to get so watered down that it doesn't have any teeth. And because we are in the community, Southwest Riverside County especially, but all of Riverside County, it is something that we should stand with each other on. And so I would encourage everybody to come, even if you're not a resident. The way it works in Lake Elsinore is at the beginning of the meeting, you have 1 minute to talk about anything that you want to talk about that's not on the agenda. So you can come on April 11th. This won't be on the agenda. You can talk about it right at the beginning of the meeting. Or you can wait till the end of the meeting. You get 3 minutes to talk about it. But even if you come at the beginning and just make that one comment that you believe that we should have stricter good neighbor policies, that would be beneficial, I think, for us to hear. So I would encourage you to come out. Now, during a meeting that this issue will be on the agenda, you will get 3 minutes to talk about it during the time that the council considers it. And that, of course, would be on April 25th is the next meeting that this is going to be considered.
So April 5th, if I go,
April 11th and April 25th.
April 11th.
Yeah, we meet on the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays of the month.
And if it's on the agenda, you get minutes.
If it's on the agenda, you talk during the time that it's considered by the council prior to being considered by the council. But if it's not on the agenda, you can talk about anything you want prior to the start of the meeting for 1 minute or at the end of the meeting for 3 minutes.
So do you suggest it'd be helpful to you if people came on the 11th?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
I do.
Okay. Thank you.
Quick question, what time does it start?
The meeting starts at 7.
Okay,
And,
thanks.
we usually go through ceremonials first, which sometimes can take 10 minutes. And then we go into comments from the public on non-agendized items. And then we go into our regular meeting. So you usually, if you're going to come make a comment at the beginning of a meeting, you're out of there by 7:20. Depending on how many ceremonials we have.
Thank you.
And Jill, I'm just going to
Other
read your
questions?
question real quick here. Wasn't there a recent article about warehouses that worked around the no buildings near houses rule by running and parking the trucks by the houses instead?
Yep.
Are you familiar with that, Tim?
I am not familiar with that, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was, a little chicanery done to get by some of the rules that are put forth. This rule, this is meant to protect the residents of Lake Elsinore, to keep these types of buildings away from those receptacles that are sensitive, as I mentioned earlier, schools, homes, parks, etc. But again, they can get watered down pretty easly. And that's one of the things I think we need to try to avoid here. Because I do think while warehousing may be necessary, as Tammy pointed out, the trucks can cause a tremendous amount of damage to roads near where the warehousing is, and that costs the city money. And so if you're going to have a warehouse, you want to have it somewhere away from those sensitive areas.
I completely agree with that. And I can just say this from personal experience growing up in the Flint area, GM tore up the roads in Michigan every single year, and it was never pretty. So unless you want to drive a significant 4-wheel drive vehicle, this is probably something to be on the lookout for. So yeah, thanks, Tim. And I want to give you time to talk about your campaign as well.
Okay, very good. We'll start now. Thank you again for that. And, for those of you that don't know, I did announce that I'm running for Congress in California's 41st Congressional District against Mr. Calvert. For those of you that know me for a long time, you knew I ran in 2014 and 2016. This race is completely different from those races, in part because Democrats have a voter registration advantage in the district. This is a race I can win, and I am looking for your support for this campaign. And I want to give you a couple of things to consider as you make decisions about who you should support for this campaign. First, let me say that I've lived in this district for 20 years. And I lived here for 13 years before I ran the first time in 2014 in CA 42 at the time. And during that period of time, I've learned how to campaign and I've learned how to govern. Not only have I been elected 4 times or won 4 elections, I should say, I'll talk about that in a minute, but I also served as HOA president, and I still do during the majority of the time that I've lived here. I am very local and community oriented. I am not focused on Washington like Ken Calvert is. I am focused on the 41st Congressional District. With respect to those elections, I won 2 primaries in 2014 and 2016. And then, of course, I won my city council race in 2018. And that was a significant win for me personally, but also for Democrats, in part because even though Lake Elsinore is a majority Democratic city, everybody on the city council when I ran were Republicans. I beat a 17-year Republican incumbent by 43 points, 71 to 28. And that was in part because I worked hard at the campaign. I knocked on a lot of doors and I earned the trust and respect of my constituents. I then served for 4 years on the council. And during that period of time, I earned the respect of my colleagues. In regular turn, I was selected to serve as mayor pro tem in the city of Lake Elsinore. And then, of course, last year I served as mayor. For those of you that may not know, many cities in Riverside County have a rotation where you, if you're selected by your colleagues, you serve as mayor pro tem and then serve as mayor. It's not automatic. But in my case, as I said, I earned the respect of my colleagues during my first couple of years on the council. And even though they were all Republican, they voted me to serve as mayor pro tem in 2021 and then mayor in 2022. Then of course, I was up for re-election last year in 2022, and I ran unopposed. Nobody ran against me. So I won that race. And I'll tell you, if you ever get into a campaign, that's the best type of race to get into, one that you don't have an opponent with. The other thing I want to make note of is while I was serving as a council member and as mayor pro tem and mayor, I regularly did town hall meetings. As Captain Lujan and I talked about, I did town hall meetings with him at least on 2 occasions, but I did other town hall meetings too, where I stood up in front of my constituents and I took their questions. And the key about my town hall meetings was that I never required anybody to register or to tell me that they were coming. We told people where I was going to be, what time the meeting was going to be, and we invited them to come. And that included the time while I was mayor. We used to do a BYOD, bring your own dinner, or a BYOB, bring your own breakfast, and we would rotate every month. And that's one of the things I pledge to you when I get elected to Congress, is I will regularly have town hall meetings, and you don't have to register to find out where the address is. All you got to do is look to see where we post, and I'll be there and I'll stand and I'll answer questions. I think that's something that's very important for politicians to do, is to stand in front of constituents and answer questions. And sometimes those questions are easy and sometimes they're not easy. And I'm happy to take either type of question in that regard. And I would also note, when I ran for Congress back in 2014 and 2016, I also did town hall meetings in each of the cities. I see my friend Dean on the video tonight. He helped us organize that. We would drop signs in Norco and Corona and some of the other cities in the district, and we did town hall meetings then. During this campaign, I will do town hall meetings as well. Now, let me talk a little bit about the infrastructure of the campaign. Because this campaign is so much different, we're in a purple district, and I can win this race. I've found it very easy to hire consulting firms. We've hired a consulting firm out of Washington called Intego Consulting. They're helping us put together the campaign. We've also hired a fundraising consulting firm out of Michigan, MS Strategies, and they're helping us with fundraising issues. And of course, we have a professional treasurer who's based up in the Sacramento area, who's going to be working on our treasurer issues, our money issues. So this is different than the first time when I ran, when I would call consulting firms and they would say, you know, you just don't really have a chance. But this time it was easy, and we have professional consulting firms. There are three issues that I think are going to be at the forefront for when I get to Washington very quickly. Codify Roe v. Wade. The first thing I do when I get to DC is find whatever member of Congress is introducing such a bill and signing on to it right away. I am a big supporter of Planned Parenthood. A couple of weeks ago, I was actually on a panel with other members of the community for Planned Parenthood. Big supporter of that. I also believe that we need to have Medicare for all. People should not live in this country and not have adequate health care. That'll be something else I'll focus on when I get to DC. And the last issue, which is a bit esoteric, but it's very important if you think about it. My background is labor. I've worked for National Treasury Employees Union for 27 years, which is a federal sector union that represents federal employees. And one of the things that I see happening all the time is that different Congresses and different administrations sometimes cuts the money for agencies to be able to operate and do their job. We especially see it when the Republicans get control of the purse strings and they cut EPA. One of the things that I'm going to make sure that I do when I get to DC is get on the Government Services Committee to make sure that each of those agencies that do the things that protect us, like the Environmental Protection Agency, has enough money to actually do their job. And of course, that stems from my background working in labor and representing federal employees. So those are my three big issues. I'm with you on almost every other issue as well. Feel free to send me a text and or a phone call, and I'll be happy to discuss those with you. And finally, actually, two more things. This is the last substantive issue. Let me tell you, this is a secret. Ken Calvert does not want to run against me. It doesn't matter who else gets in the race. Calvert does not want to run against me. Why? He sees what I've done in Lake Elsinore. He sees that I've been out in the community, and he doesn't want to have to deal with that. We did do the announcement a couple of weeks ago, and of course, his people got interviewed by Jeff Horseman from the Press Enterprise, and he just ripped into me as the old tax and spend liberal Democrat that, you know, even though I've been serving with 4 of his colleagues on the Lake Elsinore City Council for the last 4 years. But just trust me, Ken Calvert doesn't want to run against me. He wants to run against somebody else. Finally, it does cost money to run a campaign. If you would, please go to SheridanForCongress.com. We have an ActBlue account. I would appreciate any donations or contributions that you can make. And I appreciate the time. Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tim. And feel free to put your information in the chat too, just to make sure people have it. All right. And so next up we have Griffin please tell me if I say this wrong. Griffin Krawitz, Field Director for Dr. Raul Ruiz.
Well, it's Griffin Krawitz, but you know, no one gets it
My
right
apologies.
So it's totally fine. It's totally fine. So hello, everyone. Thanks for having me here today. Thank you, Brian and Nancy, for inviting me to speak at tonight's meeting. My name is Griffin Krawitz. I am I handle the Congressman Raul Ruiz's field operations for Congressional District 25. I've been working on this campaign since 2021. I actually worked on through his 2022 reelection, but I'm back here for 2023, really preparing for this really important presidential election. And so for those of you who may not know, Congressman Ruiz represented basically all of eastern Riverside County, all the way from Hemet and San Jacinto through the Pass area, all of the Coachella Valley to the Arizona border and Blythe. The district mirrors that now, but it's changed somewhat drastically due to redistricting. Much of the Coachella Valley, it's basically been split into two, where you have the area represented by Congressman Ruiz, and you have the area represented by Ken Calvert. The congressman's district looks a little strange. It has all of Imperial Valley up all the way to the city of Needles in San Bernardino County, but then it cuts across the Coachella Valley through the pass and now extends to Hemet, San Jacinto, and Winchester, kind of in that just east of Temecula over there. So I thought, you know, this would be a great opportunity to introduce myself to you all, especially as we want to really, the campaign really wants to start doing more organizing and turning out Democrats to vote in 2024. Just in case you're not familiar with the congressman's race, he was elected in 2012, beating incumbent Mary Bono. She was a longtime incumbent, and no one thought he had a chance, but he won, obviously, and has been serving since 2012. Every year since then, his district was considered a purple district, and so the RNC was pumping a lot of money into his opponents to get him out, and he was focusing, you know, all of his energy on making sure he was reelected, and he was successful. But now, due to redistricting, the district has got a lot more safer. It's a lot more safe. It has significantly more registered Democrats, and it's seen as a fairly safe Democratic district. I believe the Cook report had the district, last time I checked, maybe saying between D+8 to D+10, considered a safe Democratic district, and the election in 2022 reflected that. And so a big focus now that the campaign really hasn't had an opportunity to do is to really focus on local campaigns. We see it all the time that cities that on paper should be Democratic, the city councils or maybe the school boards or whatever local elected offices there are don't necessarily reflect that. And so a big focus of our campaign, which we started to build the infrastructure up in 2022, but we're really going to hit the ground running in 2024, is to really start that grassroots turnout to get Democrats excited and to vote. And that goes for at all levels. So from congressional and CA 41 to flip that seat, to state offices, to local, to anything, any office where a Democrat is running, we want to help and really get this the congressional district and the whole all Riverside County more blue, and that's really our main goal. And we started that with a big part of that is, you know, recruiting people to help the campaign's operations, and so a big part of that is finding dedicated volunteers and young people, especially. A big focus of our campaign last election was getting young people out. And so the congressional district compared to the previous district got a lot younger. And so as a result, we need to recruit more young people. And we started our campaign internship program, where we were able to get a group of more than 60 young people across the congressional district to start, you know, to help get out the vote and to register voters and to help turn out the vote. When we would campaign for the congressman, we would campaign for other endorsed local campaigns, state senate for Christy Holstage and her assembly district, to city council districts, and we were very successful in recruiting lots of volunteers in the Hemet area and San Jacinto, and starting to create more activity that maybe wasn't previously there before. And we're going to continue that as well, and to also lend our support to help other Democrats wherever you may be, because this is really a team effort, and we're excited to help. And so I'm here. Brian and Nancy has my contact information and can give it to anyone who's interested. But I just wanted to take this time, to quickly introduce myself and to introduce the congressman, who maybe you haven't had the chance to meet him yet. He's he's very busy at the moment. He was actually recently selected to be ranking member of the COVID-19 subcommittee, which has been a very great experience in the sense that he's a medical doctor. He was an emergency room physician before running for Congress, and so he's able to bring that doctor public health approach first to such a polarizing issue, even with people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's also on the committee, can make it a little difficult, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, and it's a great opportunity for the people of the Riverside and the people for our country, and just continue to really focus on getting results done for veterans. He was a major proponent of the PACT Act, which passed last Congress and included his legislation for burn pits. He was a huge advocate for making sure that there was legislation passed to help our veterans get presumptive benefits for the diseases and the illnesses they incurred due to toxic burn pit exposure they occurred while serving overseas. And now he's working, recently introduced a few days ago, the Major Richard Starr Act to help further expand healthcare for our veterans that they deserve and that they haven't been able to get. And so just continue to get the balls rolling in there. But on the campaign side where I reside, we see there's a lot of opportunity, especially in the western part of our district, the Hemet, San Jacinto, Winchester part of the district. And we're really excited to work with you all, to get to know you and to really push the ball forward and to finally get Riverside County over the hump where in the last election, I believe the whole county was very slightly for Republican statewide candidates. And that's just indicative of, I think, the opportunity that we have to really push it over the edge and to really start to get more Democrats out and to have the vote reflect that. And so we're excited for that, and I'm excited to be here and to meet you all. I know it's fairly late, so I don't want to keep you all too long, but if you have any questions or anything, you can feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be more than happy to help. So thank you.
All right, much appreciated. And I definitely will be hitting you up to talk about the youth vote at some point in the not too distant future. So certainly feel free to put your information in the chat, and
Definitely.
we'll give you opportunity to have people ask questions as they come up. So thank you again, Griffin.
Perfect. Thank you.
So even best intentions, we're still running behind here. So I'm going to go ahead and let's start the report section. Real quick, the only thing I'm going to talk about as far as my report, you may or may not have seen, but I was at the Temecula Valley School District CRT forum that happened a few weeks ago. And I was one of the people that took video at that meeting. I didn't speak. But I think my camera kind of spoke, because I was able to give video of Nick Pardue, Jessica Alexander, and multiple other people behaving poorly. And not that this is to be anything less than expected from them, but it just, again, it reemphasizes, it reiterates the need for all of us to focus on these school boards, focus on making sure your voices are heard, making sure that you're encouraging friends, family, other interested parties in speaking up and speaking out, because this isn't going away. And as Temecula has gone, Murrieta is not far behind, and that also brings up Lake Elsinore, Menifee, things like that. So I actually have a specific thing to Menifee that we'll talk about in the announcements section, but for sake of time, I'll keep it simple tonight. Jerry, any reports for the programs?
Yeah, next meeting, we are scheduling either a representative from Adam Schiff's office or Katie Porter's to speak about their senatorial campaign. We'll also have somebody from the Riverside County Democrats to speak to us and tell us about the whole system from the state down to our club. And don't forget, Susan Dye, who's a previous president, is one of our participants for tonight. And Brian, ask her, she has a real quick announcement to make of about 2 minutes. Okay, maybe 90 seconds. Okay, and that is all I've got for right now. Oh, I'm going to add one more thing. My wife pays attention to the internet stuff all the time. Tim Sheridan does do a fabulous job. We are in his district in the city. This guy communicates better than anybody. He's not afraid of meeting with people. I mean, he really does do a great job. If we can get that out there, we can have a congressman as part of as one of our members. All done.
Much appreciated, Jerry. I'll just again hit on the fact that membership and events are both open. We could very much use your help. If you are at all interested in either one of those roles, reach out to me or reach out to any of us. We're all happy to talk about it. But again, we could certainly use the assistance. And I don't want to force it upon anyone. I know we're all busy. So, again, if we can help, awesome. Nancy, anything for political action?
The only thing I really want to say is, well, thanks so much, Griffin. Youth voting is a big heart issue of mine, and I know I made kind of a proposal last time that we're going to vote on, but I do feel like after talking with the leadership team, that was kind of putting the horse behind the cart instead of in front of it. So we're actually going to circle back. We're working on our mutual values and areas of action we'd like to focus on the next couple months. So we'll be presenting that to you at the next meeting. So I just want to make sure I said that out loud for everybody.
Anything else?
Yeah, no, any other questions specifically about ideas or what we're doing, feel free to shoot us an email.
All right. Angel.
Yeah, I do not have a report this evening.
All right. And Mary Jo?
Just real quick, we've brought, year to date, we've brought in $2,370 in revenue. Includes dues, Hamilton Club, donations, and recycling. And we've spent $1,069. We are at a balance of $2,963, which is about $1,300 more than we started the year with. So we're creeping up there, but we still need to bring in more.
Much appreciated.
Okay. Thank you.
Bill?
I do not have a ton to report on the communications front, other than, I don't know, something happened in the news last week. And I just want to throw it out there in case anybody didn't. I know there's like basketball and stuff happening, and baseball is getting geared up. Apparently what happened in some faraway state is that Donald Trump, former president of the United States of America, was indicted for crimes, and we know now that there was like 34 felony charges. It's kind of a big deal, and as historical markers go, this one is kind of a fun one, just because it solidifies this theory that we've all been saying, which is this abstract concept that no one is above the law, certainly not a former president. So the fact that the indictment actually went through is kind of, I don't know, it gives me the warm fuzzies. I like it. I like seeing former presidents get indicted. That was pretty cool. Other than that, as far as our club goes, that doesn't really pertain to us. We don't really nobody here really cares about that much, I don't think. But I like to geek out on stuff from New York sometimes. As far as our club communications goes, I keep saying this, I say this, and then I never make any progress on it, but I would love to get our website sort of revamped. I would love to start building up a Discord community, just because there are people of all kinds of different ages that can use Discord and are on Discord, and we would like these people to connect with us because they're where we live, but we're just not connected. So it's still cooking. Nothing much to report as of right now.
Much appreciated. So unfinished business, we're just gonna bypass that, as Nancy said, with the last leadership meeting that we had. We're gonna revamp some things and we'll come back to the youth thing. New business, we kind of talked about it already, club values, areas of focus. So this, again, this goes back to what I was talking about earlier. We had a meeting last month about it went into a couple different directions, but the gist of it is ultimately what is it that is going to define us as an organization. There's been a lot that's happened over the past few years with the merging of a couple different groups. COVID then happened, and I think there's just a lot of need to decide what our focuses are going to be going forward. So we have the leaders all have some assignments that we're working on. We'll have our next meeting here in a few weeks, and then we'll be back with you guys to talk about that more next meeting. So need for hybrid meetings. Mary Jo, I know you said you had some information that you wanted to share about a potential location, maybe?
Yeah, I checked with Richie's in Marietta, where Temecula Valley Democrats had meetings. And we had really successful meetings there, 70, 80, 90 people in the room, which is a little more than what they'd like us to have at this point. But their the first Monday of each month is open, and there's a room minimum. So we have to spend, collectively, we have to spend $480, which it shouldn't be a problem for 40, 50, 60 people to do. And they do have a cap on the room of 60 people. So we won't be able to cram people in like we did for the TVD meetings. But it's an option to do. Audio visual wise, they really don't have much. So we would have to figure out what we wanted to do to make it a hybrid meeting. And I meant to talk to Dave about it, and I just haven't gotten to that. But if people are interested, we'll start moving that direction. If nobody's interested, I'll cancel the room. But it's probably getting to be the point in time where we should start looking at that.
I agree.
Thank you.
No, I completely agree, and I think it's a good starting point. If we need to adapt at some point in the future, we obviously can. 60, I think, is going to be more than enough space for the time being, but I have a feeling that as we start to go into 2024, that will change.
Yeah.
And plus, having the hybrid option, I think, is certainly going to work for a subset of our people, regardless of location. So,
okay.
So I'm definitely for pursuing that further.
Okay. All right.
Thanks for looking into that.
Thank you. It's a big change. It's a lot. We've been 3 years now doing this. I'm excited to see what it looks like in person. So I think at this point, let's just move on to announcements. I'm going to start with what's on the agenda. Then I've got a slew of them recently, and then there's a couple people that have asked to provide also their own announcements, and I'll provide that right afterwards. So first, those farm workers, as always, contact Becky if you have any questions about that, but donations are always an ongoing thing for that particular situation. Help is greatly appreciated. So let me pull up my list here. Okay. So I don't know if you guys got the email today. KDEM announced their theme for the upcoming convention. Don't agonize, organize. So obviously we've got a big election coming up here, and that is going to be the theme of the upcoming trip to LA. April 25th, deadline by which members of a chartered club or organization must be in good standing in order for them to be included on the roster submitted to the chartering authority and appropriate regional director, 14 days before CCO members in good standing. Long story short, if you are short on paying dues, things like that, if you haven't done that yet, this is like, please get it in now. But that's really what we're looking for there. There's a chance to hear Adam Schiff. This is coming up very, very quickly, so I want to make sure I mention it. Spotlight 29 Casino in Coachella. It's $50 for the ticket. It includes a buffet. Reservations must be turned into the Democratic Women of the Desert group by April 7th. So there's a real quick turnaround on that. I believe Bill's going to post all that information on our social media either tonight or tomorrow. So
Tomorrow.
All good. Another one, quick turnaround. Tomorrow, there's a listening tour with the Menifee School Board President, Morgan Singleton. It's at Menifee Valley Middle School, 5:30. Menifee, as I kind of alluded to earlier, is another one of these school boards that is okay for now, but if 412 continues to gain momentum, is likely to be in some difficulty in the not too distant future. So this is a good opportunity to listen, learn, and help support the people that are educating our kids. So that's it on mine. I think, Susan, if you want to, I saw you raise your hand. I know you have one of your own. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. On the Central Committee in the Assembly District 71 caucus, there is one vacancy. And if you live in AD 71 and you're a registered Democrat, you can apply, you can come to the meeting and nominate yourself or have someone else nominate you. I'm going to put in the chat. It's Tuesday, April 11th at 7 p.m. and it's a Zoom meeting. And I've left my email in the chat so that if you want the link or whatever, you can just email it to me. Thank you much.
Much appreciated. And I know Gracie's here. She has a message as well. Gracie?
If we need to come back to her, we can, because there's other people. Do you want to let
Give
Dean
it.
go?
All right, we'll wait on Gracie here for a second. Dean, I know you kind of.
Sorry, I'm here. I didn't hear. I wasn't sure if you had said my name or not.
I did. Yes. Go.
Let me get into
go
some
ahead.
light so I can turn my camera on. All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for organizing this monthly. I learned a lot from these meetings. Generally, meetings just come and go very quickly, and I think these are very well organized, so thank you. Well, I wanted to jump on here and just say that I'm excited to be running for CDP secretary, where we're getting a lot of traction. It's been 3 weeks since we announced, and since then we've gained the endorsements of several leaders across the state, and most notably, Dolores Huerta has endorsed our campaign for CDP secretary. So just to give you a little background, that race is going to be for May of this May at the convention. So don't agonize, organize. That's what we've been working on. As you all know, I serve on the board of directors for Western Municipal Water District, was elected in 2018 and re-elected in 2022. I'm by trade a water chemist, and in my time in office, I have worked diligently to get Democrats elected at every level of government, even at the appointment level, like commissions, and that's the same type of work that I want to continue to do for the party. There's two main reasons that I'm running. One, we got to take back seats. In order to get real democratic policy change, we need to support our legislators by having our democratic values through and all levels of government, all down ballot races. And second, we're only going to be able to do that if we have some party unity. So I believe that the way that we are going to start uniting as Democrats is by winning. If we're winning in Temecula, if we're winning in Murrieta, then it's easier for us to uphold our values, to get rid of those essentially racist and homophobic voices that we keep hearing throughout the region. Republicans have, as you all are experiencing right now. And for me, it's really tough because I worked very diligently on one of those Murrieta campaigns in 2022. But we need to continue to, not agonize, but organize. And we do that with party unity. And that's how we're going to take back our seats. That's what matters most to me. I've been doing that work in the last 5 years that I've been elected. From recruiting to training to getting Democrats elected. And so I'm here hoping that I can gain your vote as a delegate, if you're a delegate. And if you're not a delegate and you want to help us organize, that's what we're here to do. But Thank you so much. Really, I'm excited to run and bring some representation to these inland regions that continue to be ignored and in different ways, and bring more resources down to the Inland Empire. So I don't know if there's time for questions, but if there is, I'll wait. Otherwise, I'm going to leave all my contact information in the chat. If you're willing to endorse me now, support me now, just click on the link and fill out the form letting us know. But you're always welcome to give me a call if you want to continue talking and get to know me a little better. Thank you so much, Brian, for the time.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Gracie. Dean, I want to give you a chance. I know we talked about it at the beginning, but I want to give you an opportunity to make sure you talk to the larger group about the recycling.
All right, so I'm sure everybody knows that this is the typical guy you want to turn in, a plastic bottle. There's different sizes. You can have different colors. There's even a white plastic that we take. There's the typical beer can, Pepsi can type thing that, this is where really the big money is for. And I'll take glass of all types. I pointed out before the meeting to some people that typically people think wine bottles aren't but that's glass. It doesn't get as much money back, but it's worth something. There are some things that they don't take. They don't take milk jugs. It's just like a state law. And they don't take and paper. And so don't bother with newspaper. But you can give me almost anything else as long as it's empty. I'll take it. I have my information in the chat. You can call me. I'll come get it, or you can call me and you can drop it off. And it's one of our fundraisers that's just kind of a semi-passive type thing. It's just nice to have like a little bit of spare money just kind of drop into our bucket. If you put everything into the green bin or the gray bin, that's nice for recycling, but that doesn't help us. So to help us and recycle, please get it to us and get it to me, and I'll turn it in to Mary Jo. And I appreciate it. It's fun. It keeps me off the street. I thank you for letting me do this. Thank you, guys.
It sounds like you're skimming something off the top there.
I wish I was.
No, I obviously appreciate the work you do, and I think you're gonna be overwhelmed with the number of pop cans that we have for you. So,
I can't wait.
So I've got a couple more for sure. Jimmy, I'm gonna let you go next because you got your hand raised.
Thank you. I would like to bring to the attention of everyone, I had an opportunity last Saturday to attend the Black Reparation meeting that they were conducting in the city of Riverside. And I had an opportunity to learn a lot more about what this process was about. And I wanted to bring to the club and ask the club as a whole, as a unity issue, to support the Black Reparation particular movement. On April the 21st, that is on Friday, and Saturday the 22nd, Dr. Camilla, I may be mispronouncing her name, she's the chairperson of the Black Reparation Movement, appointed by the governor for the state of California, will be speaking in Riverside. I already listed my name and phone number and address and such as that if anyone wanted to get in touch with me for specifics pertaining to it. But that's something I think that would be beneficial to the club as a whole. And it's an interest that I have a lot of concerns about as well. So I wanted to bring that to the table and share it with everyone.
Oh, thank you, Jimmy. I appreciate that. And I was not aware that was coming, and I will do my absolute best to be there. That's I think it's really important to have those conversations. So thanks. Nancy?
Yes. Yeah. And then I want to make sure we give Margaret from Climate Change Lobby, who's joining us, a chance to tell about the Earth Day event that she's looking for some volunteer help for.
Thank you, Nancy. Yeah, my name is Margaret Meinke, and I'm the chapter leader for Southwest Riverside County for Citizens Climate Lobby. And we're a bipartisan organization with Republicans and Democrats working together on climate change. And our chapter is focused on Congressman Ken Calvert. So we have an upcoming event, a tabling event at the Murrieta Public Library Earth Day event on April 22nd. My friend Catherine Miller at the library, she's been working on this really hard, and I would love to see this be a huge, successful event. It was pretty big last year, but I told her, go big or go home, Catherine. So trying to get as many vendors there as possible and as much participation. It's April 22nd. It's a Saturday from 9 to 1. And Citizens Climate Lobby will be having a booth there. So want to invite any Democrats that are interested in coming and helping out, learning more about Citizens Climate Lobby. And I'm going to drop a link in the chat and hopefully be around to answer questions if needed and talk to anybody later. Thank you for all that you're doing.
Much appreciated, Margaret. Yeah, so does anyone else have any other announcements tonight? I know we're running late. The game's now over for those that didn't know. Anything else that we need to cover for announcements?
Oh, one more thing.
Sure, go ahead, Bill.
Just, I guess, I don't know if this is, are you doing events next or is that part of it?
You guys all see we've kind of mixed them up here to some degree.
okay.
So you guys have seen the events on the agenda, plus the events that people have been talking about here. Bill, have at it.
Yeah, I just wanted to call out. I have not been very good about social media this week, so I apologize. Our monthly beer night is this Thursday at the same place, Solaris Beer and Blending. Be there if you can. It's good times. Last time was fabulous. Saw some people I hadn't seen in a while. Met some new people. Great beer. Highly encourage.
I can vouch for that. It's always been a good time, and we had a ton of people there last time. It was very positive. So any other announcements, events, anything else that anyone else would like to bring up? I take silence as we're all good. So thank you guys very much for your patience tonight, and hopefully it was educational for everyone.
Oh, shoot, Julia's raising her.
Julie, are you raising your hand?
Yep.
You're on
I
mute.
think you're muted.
Okay, I just wanted to say, for those that use the information in chat, if you save it, then you don't have to write down all those numbers. So I always encourage Brian to say that before we end the Zoom meeting. Save chat. Thank you.
Save chat.
Thanks, Julie.
Thanks, Julie. I appreciate the reminder. So save the chat. And with that, motion to adjourn.
Second.
How do you say chat?
But the three little dots at the bottom of chat, there's three little dots, and you just click on that and then save, and it saves it to your laptop. I don't know how it works on the phones, but
Got it. Thank you.
okay, good. It's in your documents. Bye.
All right, guys. Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Night, everyone.